Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. Each week, we bring you real-life stories and expert insights to help you create a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician with over 2 decades of experience blending Eastern and Western well-being practices. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I'm here to help you reconnect with your own inner radiance. Remember, small changes make a large impact, and it all starts here. Please note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am excited to welcome back to the show today Dr. Malasri Chaudhery-Malgeri. Dr. Mala was on the show a few weeks ago talking about rehabilitative henna art, and today she's going to talk about rehabilitative martial arts. So I'm really excited to dive into today's conversation. But first, a little bit more about Dr. Mala. So Dr. Mala is a psychologist. She is also the founder of Synergy Center, where she provides premier holistic wellness and life management services for all ages. Her approach embodies the integration of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. It's a combination and approach that I personally love. She brings together the best of both of these worlds in her work with clients. In addition, Dr. Mala is a professional speaker on topics related to rehabilitative martial arts, rehabilitative henna art, martial arts mentality in the workplace, and much more. And if that wasn't enough, she is also the Chief Clinical Officer for Recovery.com, a platform with the mission of helping everyone find the best path to recovery through the most comprehensive, helpful network of treatment providers worldwide. So today we're going to talk about rehabilitative martial arts. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Mala.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed our last conversation about rehabilitative henna art, the use of henna art coupled with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to assist the therapeutic process. And now I'm excited. Again, this is also a topic, that was a topic that I'd never had on the show before. And today's topic is also one that I've never had on the show before. And so I'm really excited to dive into it. And that is rehabilitative martial arts. So tell me, what does that mean? What is that?
Yeah. So for us, rehabilitative martial arts is a trauma-informed, empowerment-based program that I created with my husband, Coach Chris Malgeri. And it's a really unique approach to taking something like CBT with the physical, cultural, and psychological richness that comes with martial arts. And what you'll see in studying martial arts, which I've had the blessing and opportunity to do because I met my husband, contributes to its own healing language through a variety of different tools. So we'll dig into that for sure. So yeah.
Before we dig into that, and I
Mhm.
know you described this and gave us a definition in the previous episode that you were on, but
Mhm.
just in case someone's tuning in who hasn't tuned into that episode yet, which by the way, they definitely should after listening to this one because it is fantastic. But for someone who this is new to, can you give a definition? You mentioned CBT. So for someone who may not be familiar with what that is, can you
Yeah.
just describe that and then describe how martial arts can be coupled with that, or how you have created a program and approach that does that?
Absolutely. So CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And generally it's for reframing negative thought patterns. And what we focused on with the martial arts aspect of it is how to teach individuals or work with individuals to recognize automatic thoughts, reframe distorted thinking, build behavioral strategies, and then strengthen emotional expression and regulation. So, what the martial arts part of it and how we were able to make it rehabilitative martial arts was to basically take embodied practice to reinforce all of those skills that then make those cognitive shifts and reframings tangible, lived, and empowering.
There's a lot of thoughts going through my head right now about this. So one is kind of general perceptions of martial arts. I'm not a martial artist. There's a lot of similarities, I feel like, between martial arts and, yoga practices. And I'm
Yoga.
a certified yoga instructor, and just that, enhancing that mind body connection, how it affects the mental aspects, emotional and physical as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the first thing I think of when I think of the martial arts is the demanding physical aspects, both demanding and the focus that it requires. And so for someone who's like, well, I guess I'm asking the question. I was going to say for someone who's asking this question, but I am asking this question is how are you coupling that demanding physical practice that requires so much focus with helping people recognize their negative thoughts? Like, how do you tie that in this
Yeah.
rehabilitative martial arts practice?
So let me take a couple steps back too. So like the part of what we utilize to build this program is where we have a nice array of tools for physicality levels, different varying physicality levels. So you could do this sitting in a chair. You could do this standing up. You could do this combination, hybrid, sitting and standing. Um, each art that we utilize to kind of build this curriculum, and there are a few: Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Filipino martial arts, Tai Chi, contributes to its own healing language through rhythm, breath, movement, and of course, the martial arts philosophy. And when you study these arts separately, collectively, you'll see that there's so much that comes back to being mindful, being grounded, and being able to connect with yourself, right? What it created, that whole aspect of it created such a beautiful mode for us to say, well, CBT is all about reframing thoughts. And oftentimes, what do we see? Even in yoga, you'll see this, like, what's the number one complaint? You sit down to practice or you engage in practice, and it's like, you've got your mind going a million miles an hour. And the minute you give yourself that chance to even practice anything, you're hearing all that chatter, right? So I can't quiet my mind. I can't do this. I can't do that, right? That's what we hear. And what we were able to see with the martial arts application is that it gives you not only the tool to kind of derail that chatter, but also express that chatter, right? And we can go through the different arts. So like I named a whole bunch, and these are not the only ones that we used, but they are certainly ones to highlight. But with Muay Thai, which is a form of boxing, it emphasizes striking, elbows, knees, and shins, demands balance, timing, body control. The CBT integration allows clients to explore their power and the boundaries and how that shows up first in their lives, and then how that can be applied then tangibly through striking drills, right? So like striking drills become metaphors for reclaiming voice and a sense of agency. From a therapeutic perspective, as you're working through that, we also work on building confidence, on releasing suppressed anger, and teaching how to regulate adrenaline and aggression constructively. And then coming back to what you were saying right at the beginning, that mind body connection, right? Coordinating breath with strikes or movements reinforces that CBT breathing technique for emotional regulation, not to mention mindfulness and all of the things that we're hoping that we're going to invoke through something therapeutic. Now we're talking about striking. Please keep in mind, we're not talking about being, aggressive in any way. This is purely for movement, okay, purposes. And one of the things that I like to say is that when we teach someone to strike with intention, right, we're also teaching them to speak with clarity and stand in their truth. So the strike isn't one that is about aggression or retaliation or something that's to be used negatively, of course. It's to be able to understand themselves. It's to be able to feel their motion, their movement, and know that they've got the control of that, and that they can, in embracing that control, they can speak to that clarity and stand in their truth.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, just so multifaceted and
Mhm,
multi-layered. I love that. You mentioned these four components of martial arts that resonated so deeply with me and with yoga practice as well, which was rhythm, breath, movement,
mhm,
and philosophy. And yoga
mhm,
practice encompasses all of that too. When you're
mhm.
doing and by yoga practice really encompasses a lot of different
Yeah.
modalities within that. But when I'm thinking about the yoga physical practice, going through physical
Mhm,
postures, what we often think about in terms of going to a yoga class these days,
mhm,
in our current age and culture, is getting into a rhythm with that movement.
mhm,
Noticing our
mhm.
breath, adjusting our breath with the movement, and also encompassing some of that philosophy behind that as well. And
Yeah.
the other thing I thought of, in my mind, I'm just drawing all these parallels with what
Yeah,
I know in
yeah.
my experience in yoga, but also, in as a student and teacher of yoga, we often talk about, lessons learned on the mat and taking that off the mat, right? Like,
100%. Yep.
and that's what I
Mhm,
thought of when you were describing some of this
mhm,
sort of, different tools that you're practicing and reframing and recognizing your thoughts and then uh, pivoting into ways to express those thoughts in very intentional, clear ways, just as you gave that example of when you're teaching someone
mhm,
to strike with intention, it's really about having that clarity. And
mhm,
so I thought that was really beautiful. And then another aspect of it really being a tool of being more mindful, grounded, and connecting with oneself. And
mhm,
something else that I thought of through all of that was just honestly, what was coming up for me is just this sense of awe of how powerful and useful it is to when we start to use our body as a vehicle to connect
mhm.
with ourselves and to understand
Absolutely.
ourselves better, and how so many of these physical practices can be these wonderful metaphors for life. And as you were sharing it took me to, yes, these experiences I've had with yoga, but also to these experiences that I had when I was in middle school and high school, you
Yeah.
know, decades ago. And I was a runner, and I'm still a
Mhm,
runner, but I started running in medical school, or I'm sorry,
mhm,
middle school.
mhm.
And, all through middle school and high school, and I would always draw these metaphors
Yeah.
between my running experiences and just life. At that time it was
Mhm.
like high school experiences, but that's
Right.
continued, but that's where it started. But those sort of metaphors of using movement and challenging myself in terms of my physical body
Mhm, mhm.
has just played such beautiful metaphors for other aspects and challenging moments in my life. And so I was just overcome by this sort of feeling of awe as you were describing that, of just how there's all these different modalities
Yes.
of
Yeah.
using movement. Now for the past 2 years, I've been taking ballet lessons, right? And so
Mhm. Nice.
dancing,
Yeah.
is another form of that sort of movement that
Yeah.
it just has so many levels
Yeah. Mhm.
of benefit. Before we go on, I'm excited to share something that could really make a positive impact on your life. Need a way to improve focus and reduce stress? Inner Radiance Through Meditation is a self paced audio program that guides you through the what, why, and how of meditation. With 3 audio lessons, including guided meditations, you'll learn how to overcome common obstacles, understand the science of meditation, and start a home practice that fits your life. Ready to find peace amidst the chaos? Head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com to access this course and start your journey to inner calm today. I hope you found that helpful. If you're ready to explore this more, check out the link in the show notes below. Now, let's jump back into today's episode.
Yeah. Yeah. So my background is not in martial arts. From a practitioner standpoint, I also got certified in yoga, and I have a very heavy background in dance forms. So classical Indian dance for sure, but I did a variety of them. And then Later on in my youth, and also in my adulthood, I went into salsa dancing, Afro-Cuban salsa, ballroom dancing, and competed in both, as well as Argentine tango, which I share with my husband, all of those as well. And we actually have separate programs specifically utilizing dance theory and technique, and yoga programs also for rehabilitative purposes as well. Thankfully, I mean, it's so exciting to see that we're living in a world where yoga is now very frequently spoken of, whereas before, when I started off in the field of mental health, it was not, it was considered woo woo, like anything that we put in that Asian kind of category or Eastern category of philosophy was kind of like, oh, that's out there, but now we're integrating so many of those beautiful holistic practices in. And you're right, like everything that we see that's a yogic principle thought process is applied, and it is part of the martial arts mentality as well. And in my mind, I think of yoga almost as like a foundational aspect and component to so many of these martial arts, because the theories are the same, the concepts are the same. Even when we think about, like, if we isolated yet another art form for martial arts with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, again, my husband could speak about this more, but what I've been able to observe is that it's rooted in leverage, flow, and strategic problem solving on the ground, right? And it mirrors the therapeutic process in some really profound ways. That CBT integration is where we get people to identify mental submission holds. What are those negative thought spirals? And then we teach them through CBT how to breathe through that discomfort, how to assess what the options are, how to essentially regain a sense of control, just like you do on the mat, whether you're doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and trying to figure out the next roll, right? Or you're doing a form of kickboxing and trying to figure out what the next move is going to be, or you do Filipino martial arts and you're working with sticks, and daggers, so the therapeutic benefit is, again, coming back to these shared principles of teaching patience, body awareness and connection, emotional resilience, and then fostering safe physical contact and trust building, which is huge for trauma survivors and PTSD. So learning when to resist and when to flow and when to, in BJJ, tap out, aligns with the CBT emphasis on adaptive coping and boundary setting. And what we see is that martial arts, arguably BJJ, teaches us that surrender is not failure, it's wisdom, because what you're surrendering to first is yourself. So we use that to expand upon. Yeah.
Wow. You just dropped so many just incredible pieces of I just there's so much going on in my head right now. Just so much wisdom there that you shared, and so much depth and breadth to what you shared there. Thank you so much. That brought up so many different ideas and thoughts for me as well. I mean, if someone is watching this on YouTube, they could just see my facial expressions throughout while you were talking, because I was just like, whoa. Um, but one of those things was when you mentioned like mental submission holds. Like
Mhm.
that just had me thinking about those times that we have those like negative thought spirals, and it's just like going and going and going. And it's like, how do I get out of that, right? That mental submission hold. And then that idea of surrender not being failure. In my work, I work with a lot of women, high achieving women, particularly,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
women who are used to not failing, right?
Mhm.
And the idea of failing can be really scary. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of fear around this idea of quote unquote failure, and this idea that surrender is not failure, but it is wisdom, right?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
was so beautiful as well. Um, goodness, there was just so much with what you shared. Going back a little bit more to also when you shared about your dance experience,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
also had another thought about the dance forms that you have engaged in, and a number of these sort of social dances. And
Yeah.
that just made me think of parallels between the social dances like
Mhm,
Latin dance, Argentine
mhm.
tango, like a number of these social dances. The parallel with that perhaps with martial arts, where
Oh,
you are, engaging in direct contact, like you said, this sort of safe contact and
mhm.
building trust with another individual.
Mhm, mhm, absolutely. I mean, that was actually part of my own rehabilitative journey because I have gone through trauma and anxiety, and manage that and work through that every day is a beautiful learning, journey for us. I would say just in general, but those of us who have experienced something or another, whether it's depression, anxiety, what have you, that is something that I always am humbled by and encourage everyone to think about. But for myself, that's actually how I landed on it, as a therapeutic tool and modality. Yoga was in my life forever. I was like raised with it, and so I was thinking to myself, if I could use that to heal, then why can't I use these other things to heal? And I did for myself. That was part of my own rehabilitative program, and recovery journey. And let me tell you, the first time you're on the dance floor with a partner, and coming from a background where it was all solo, and if we did anything group, it was synchronized. It wasn't necessarily, together face to face. The first time you're with a partner and you have to learn that person and then you have to learn yourself with that person, and there's nothing romantic or anything. This is like instructional. This is, for learning purposes, what have you. It really does make you stop and think, and there are fears that you will confront, and you've got to decide, okay, how am I going to navigate this? you know and so that's what got me thinking, for sure I was able to experience it firsthand for myself, but in so doing was able to take those theories and techniques and concepts and say, okay, let us use this as a therapeutic modality. So one of the things that I have also done is create a dance program specifically for individuals, but also for marriages and families, and through that rehabilitative process of healing family dynamics or marital dynamics, through dance and something like couples based dance.
Mm, that's so beautiful. And
Mhm.
thank you for sharing also a bit of your personal journey
Of
through
course.
all of this too.
Mhm. Mhm.
One thing that I always share and express on this show and with my work with clients is that, and one of the reasons that I even have this show, which is to expose people to lots of different tools and modalities for self care, because I truly believe that self care and what we need for our healing, for our recovery, for our well being
Mhm.
is different for everyone. It's different for
Mhm.
each individual. And it's also different during different seasons of our life. So I really
Yes.
appreciated hearing your journey of how, yoga was sort of always there for you as part of your
Mhm.
journey and your experience. And you've used it to heal through many things. But then that also opened your eyes and awareness to using different modalities during different times and seasons in your life. So I really appreciated you sharing that personal part of your journey as well. So thank you for that. Now, for anyone who's listening, we talked about quite a few things, and as is quite typical on this show, I tend to go on lots of tangents of different things that the topics that we're talking about make me think of. But where can someone learn more about you, about the work that you're doing, about rehabilitative martial arts, and honestly, just the variety of programs that you're offering as well? It's so inspiring to see how you're bringing all of this together to support people on their journeys. Where can people learn more?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so my social handle is at the official Dr. Mala. You can also find more information about me at drmala.net. My husband, who's the martial arts specialist and also the director of the Synergy Center, can be at the official Coach Chris, or his website, which is primarily the synergycenter.net. I always encourage people to reach out to me. So feel free, get me on socials. I'm on every platform. And then, of course, one of the resources that I always recommend people to is recovery.com. Beautiful, beautiful space to connect you to the treatment that you need globally. So definitely check those out. But also, please reach out to me if you have any questions.
I know you have so many choices for how to spend your time, so I thank you for being here today with Essential Self-Care. As a gift, download your free workbook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com and start your journey to a more radiant you.